This is your host, King Eric the Great, and we are now tuned in right now. Show sponsored by Buddy Boy Entertainment, sponsored by Jesse's Boutique, sponsored by Dirty Basement, and we got a lot lined up tonight, man. And the song that we just played was from my man, Caliber 007, called Revolutionary Suicide. Big shout out to him and the whole Jersey Block movement. Rest in peace, Fatal Hussein. And we on live, and I got my man T-Max with the facts in the building.
What it do? Friday Night Lights, OTC, and the place to be. Keegan and myself. Shout out to our co-host of Spirit, Ila R da Sandman, Lady Chinchilla So Illa. We live and direct. And King, once again, as always, man, we got a very, very, very special guest. Rather I say guest tonight, but for our first, guest, and it's only right that we give him the appropriate introduction. This man right here is one of the most esteemed, one of the most respected, knowledgeable, and essential journalists in hip-hop today. This man has interviewed countless of your favorite rappers, producers, anybody who's involved with the culture, and also has his own, podcast he does, known as A Cipher. But more than that, he exclusively writes for Complex Magazine, and we're so honored and blessed to have him on the show tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, the incomparable, impeccable in his presentations and profession and articulations, Sean Setaro, y'all.
Well, wow, that was an incredible intro. I should tape that and send it to my parents. Thank you guys so much, King and T. Thank you guys so much. This is a true honor to be on the show with you guys. I wish that the world were in a better place, of course, when we were talking.
Of course.
Tonight, but
right.
It is truly really great to talk with you guys, and thank you for having me on.
We appreciate having you
man.
So much on, man. One thing about it, and the intro, we'll have this show on YouTube so your parents can hear it. So don't worry. This is going to be recorded for posterity, so King will make sure it's on YouTube.
Amazing. Send me the link when it's live. Please.
Yes, we will. Like I said, we're so grateful. We're so privileged to have you on, man. I mean, for such a distinguished individual such as yourself, and you're actually the first journalist, active journalist that we've had on this show in terms of, breaking down, the science and the politics of what goes in to being, a magazine writer, all the aspects. And, of course, most notably, which is really, for all of y'all who have not checked out his exhaustively refreshing and, and it's refreshing because with your whole coverage of the 6ix9ine, Tekashi 6ix9ine legal drama, all the way from his entry into the game to the investigations to the court proceedings, we're going to try to get as much into everything because, Sean, that investigation piece you did was just, to say that it was outstanding is too modest to compliment. That research was unbelievable.
Well, thank you.
The beginning.
I really did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is, for your listeners, you can find. We did a podcast called "Infamous: The Tekashi 6ix9ine Story" that you can find on Spotify. 8-part, narrative podcast. It is narrated by the legend Angie Martinez. And, we had I reported it. We had a very small and dedicated team working on it. My partner on it, Shiva Bayat, and Ann Hepperman, and Catherine St. Louis was our fantastic editor. So, very small and dedicated team. I was kind of the reporter and the writer for it. And, and I was, researching the case from probably about even before there was a case, I was like researching the people around Tekashi from like the summer of 2018, and then he got arrested that November, and I started going to court and reporting on it, and then we started working on the podcast towards the beginning of 2019, and it came out. I think the trailer dropped in December 2019, and the first episode came out in January of this year.
Man. And we want to try to get to that. So within the time frame that we have, we want to try to get to that in terms of, because you detailed that in a way really nobody has. And so you did it so justly and so comprehensively. But before we get into all of that, we got to talk about Sean in terms of, the hip-hop enthusiast from his nascent beginnings as a youngin' to how you came into the game and ultimately, will become as revered and respected as you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of, where you come from and how you started to now.
Sure. Absolutely. I grew up in central New Jersey, exit 8 on the turnpike to get that out of the way. And definitely, the first hip hop that I really remember loving was, this kind of like the stuff that appealed to kids when I was a kid, Run DMC and the Fat Boys and that kind of stuff. Not to say it was childish, it was wonderful, but there was something about it, I think, that kids could get into. And one of the pleasures for me in recent years has been meeting the people who made sure that music could get out to where I was in the New Jersey suburbs. People who were working for Def Jam or Rush Management or other labels that made sure that that music was getting out there. That's been kind of a bonus of getting into the industry, is being able to meet the people who, made sure that the music reached me when I was starting out. But yeah, I was always a fan. I always loved writing. I was a musician for a very long time. And then around, I guess about 10 years ago or so, this website started about rap lyrics, and I got involved very early on. That site eventually became Rap Genius, and I worked there for a little while, in its early stages, and then it became Genius. And then from there, did some freelance writing, wrote for a bunch of different places, and had my podcast, The Cypher, which you were so kind as to mention, that started while I was at Rap Genius and continued afterwards. And that was really my and the producer, Josh Cross, like our baby, really. We had complete control of it, and we got to talk to so many incredible people in all aspects of kind of the hip-hop universe, and do really in-depth interviews with them. And it didn't have to be tied to the latest album. We didn't have to try to get controversial sound bites off them, although that happens sometimes anyway. And we could just do really, in-depth interviews with people. And I think that really, that's some of the stuff that I'm proudest of. And maybe about 3 years ago, I started working at Complex, writing features and things. And now, I'm an associate editor there, working on, writing and reporting stories. And also, of course, getting into podcasts there too, as you saw with Infamous. So that's, that's a little bit about how I came to the game, I guess.
Definitely. Now, Sean, in terms of you, because one thing about it is, and King also, you and King are definitely kindred spirits, and I always talk about this on the show because King wrote a hell of a incredible article about Prince in terms of his whole, in terms of all the, things Prince went through in terms of the music and his career, not necessarily his life story, but the business aspects of what was going on. So you two really have an understanding of what reputable and responsible journalism is. Now, one thing about it is you getting into that level of it, hip-hop especially, as we all know, is a very, very, very tricky type of business, especially coming from, number one, street culture, and then when you have those egos tied to street culture. So there's always going to be situations where it's not so much egos, but you're dealing with certain personalities in reference to things that may come up. And obviously your pedigree behind this is incredible. Who are some of the people that you've interviewed along the way in terms of who have given, where you really, really were able to dive into really understanding, the elements of what made them who they were as artists?
Wow. I mean, at this point, I've interviewed literally hundreds of people, and to even pick a few names out of that, I would feel like I was leaving so many people out. I think some of the people who I've gained the most knowledge from have been some of maybe the people who were lesser known, right, and who haven't really talked much about their story. For example, Rocky Ford, Robert Ford Jr., who unfortunately just died the other day, maybe this week or last week, rest in peace. I first heard of him through Bill Adler. And Rocky,
he used to work with Public Enemy, right?
Bill, yes. Bill was at Def Jam and Rush Management and did, PR for them, So Bill was the first one who hit me to Rocky Ford and his partner J.B. Moore, and what they did, which was write and produce songs for Curtis Blow and Full Force and a whole bunch of people, and just how important they were. So, I went to Rocky's apartment, I guess it was about 5 years ago now, and, sat down at his kitchen table and set up a microphone. And, I did an interview with him, and his son reached out to me afterwards, and he said, I thought I knew everything about my dad's career, but you told me some, he said some stuff in that interview that I didn't know. And those are the moments I think that are really meaningful to me, is, getting the stories that maybe weren't out there before.
Right.
And we've had a bunch of episodes like that, are with maybe less super famous figures, but people who've done incredible things. And, you can hear they were in the rooms when all the great stuff was happening, and you can get their take on it. That was something I learned from Say Adams, actually. Say is an incredible visual artist who did pretty much all the art for Def Jam in their early years and designed so many classic album covers. He was and is very, very close to the Beastie Boys. And he was the one who kind of hit me to this idea that there's always someone else in the room. It's not just the artist, Say may remember better what happened at some early Beastie Boys gig, or, Dr. Dre, the East Coast Dr. Dre, who used to DJ for them in the early days, might remember what happened better at a particular gig at the Apollo, because it's more unique to them, So I think that's one thing that I've tried to keep in mind, is to try to concentrate on the people who are in the room who maybe you haven't heard of. That's one of the reasons I love talking to producers and engineers and people like that so much, in addition to, rappers and musicians.
Definitely. And, one thing about it, what we do on this show, this is King's Baby as well. One thing we really enjoyed, as you enjoyed, what you did was, when you have that type of independent freedom, you're able to really concentrate on the spirit of what makes hip-hop, and those who really, really, really have a real appreciation for the craft. And on this show, with, so many people we've had the pleasure of interviewing, we've always had a saying on our show: no guest too big, no guest too small. We've interviewed legends like Richie Rich, K. Reno,
oh man, K. Reno's one of my favorites. I tried so hard to get him on the cipher, and we could just never make it happen.
Hey, King might be able to
anyway.
King might be able to make that happen for you.
Yeah. I mean, the cipher's on a bit of a hiatus now. I might bring it back for him, though. We'll talk afterwards.
He was kind of tough to get. It's hardly even tough to even get him on anyway. Even just to have a conversation. That guy is so busy.
Mm-hmm. Well, he releases like 18 albums a year, so you can't.
Yeah,
it's understandable. It's understandable. But yeah, you guys sound like you have a fantastic orientation towards the show. I mean, for me, it was always about, I always treated it like this is the last time I'm going to talk to this person. So let me get, everything I can about their work and what they do. And, I think for the Cypher, it worked out really well. Obviously, and I try to keep some of that in my day-to-day work in Complex now as well. Some of this orientation towards doing the research, preparing, knowing who you're talking to, and trying to ask unusual questions and ask kind of the next layer of questions beyond the obvious. I still try to do that in everything.
Hey,
Definitely.
guys, hold up 1 second. We got our other co-host. He who was in spirit, but now he's going to join us. And he just dropped a dope mixtape, too, as a matter of fact. The Silverback of Rap Part 2. That's a real dope joint right there. I'm trying to bring on Ila R da Sandman. I'm trying to bring him on, so I'm going to dial this number right
Yo.
What's up, bro?
man? We on.
What's going on, y'all? What's the same, man? Sounding back in real quick.
What's going on, man? Yeah, we know how we doing on Friday. You on the team, man. We got Sean Setaro from the Cypher and Complex magazine with us, one of the elite hip-hop journalists in the game today.
Hey,
so we
Sam,
got him on for a quick second.
Good to talk to you.
That's what's up, man. Glad for joining us, man. This is awesome right here. So, What did I miss? Talk to me.
I was talking too much about myself, and just some of the stuff I had done, with my podcast and writing, and kind of, my approach to stuff. Probably blathering on too much.
Oh no, never that. So what did you find in terms of when you really decided to take this, make this really, because obviously you had a passion for it, Sean, but in terms of, really finding yourself in a full, distinguished career with it, what did you find in terms of, as you were getting into it? Because like you said, there's so many layers to the artist in reference to, and a lot of times you have a situation where some publications would tend to, be exaggerating, capping all type, and just sometimes not getting the information totally accurate. And on this show, we always try to hold ourselves to the highest standards of journalistic credibility to disseminate the information that we, to the best of our knowledge, that we know is factual and credible between all of us. What did you find getting into the game in terms of, how it really worked in the journalism business, especially from hip-hop?
Sure. I mean, I can tell you that I had a unique way in that I came in through Rap Genius at a time where it was all about lyrics. They weren't reporting news. They weren't, making, we weren't chasing the news cycle. We weren't chasing hot artists. It was, trying to engage with artists about their work. And that was the sole mission at the time. And that was a really good way for me to get in and kind of get up my chops as an interviewer and as someone who could kind of take in a lot of information about an artist quickly and talk to them.
Right.
Just because we talk to, such a huge volume of people to get, the verified artist thing happening in the early days. It could be a novelist one day and a member of the Furious Five the next and French Montana the next,
Oh, wow.
So being in that unique position really helped me get up, and I didn't necessarily have to deal with the pressure of needing to get 1 million clicks on everything I do. So I was very was very fortunate in that way. One other thing that helped me was I, for a while, was a columnist for Forbes, not on staff, but writing for them. And I got to know a number of very, very talented staff writers for them. And so, I had access to, their library. I had access to their staff writers and could pick their brains about stuff, could do stuff for the website. And so I had an idea from that of, this is what, top-notch journalists do. Here's what they write. And, it was published on a platform alongside them. I'm not saying my work was anywhere near as good at the time, but, it was right up there. And, obviously because that name is so well known, I wanted to make sure that I got stuff right. And also it's a business paper, and I didn't really know much about business at that point. So, I had to work some element of business into every article I wrote for them. And that was really a crash course in, the music business, in finance, and in reporting, kind of all in one.
But Sean, what's interesting when you say, and what's interesting, because Forbes has always kind of had somewhat, going back to the early 2000s, a link with hip hop as well, because they would interview artists and, like Jay-Z and Master P. Is, one of the most famous articles was when they did that interview, if I'm not mistaken, Master P, when he made that, that $40 or $50 million in 1 year. That $57 million in 1 year, and of course.
He's still eating off that shit.
Yeah.
He's still eating off that shit to this day. You already know that.
Yeah. And of course, they had a Forbes list, which is like, then they had like the Forbes richest under 40, and especially a lot of hip hop. So Forbes has always, heralded the business achievements and acumen of hip hop. Shout out to Forbes magazine. So one thing about it is you delve deeper, because of course, you talked about the lyrics, because there's so many layers, in reference to how the game works, in terms of, where how the music was, how it was created, in terms of the thought that went into it. I mean, with Rap Genius, as you said, you study the lyrics of it. How do you see the game has changed, from where hip-hop was back then to where it is now, in terms of how you observe artists from their creative processes when you started to what their creative processes are now in terms of, producing music?
Well, the biggest thing that I can see is, even when I really got into hip-hop journalism, or started to maybe about 10 years ago, I'd say the difference between now and then, maybe the biggest in terms of making music, is how music is made. And what I mean by that is the model now seems to be, making beats is a collaborative process. It's no longer, for the most part, a DJ Premier and one drum machine and a stack of records, right? It's a couple brothers in Germany make a melody and they email it to someone who adds drums, who then emails it to a third person who puts on finishing touches, who then emails it to Drake, who gives it to 40, who, reworks and rearranges stuff, and then it ends up as a Drake song, right?
I'm glad you said that. I'm actually glad you said that. So, because you do make a valid point. Do you think that takes the love out of the beat or the music altogether? Because, so much people took a part in it.
That's a tough question. I mean, look, there's a part of me that wants to say, yes, if you don't have people, sweating in a small studio together, then it's not going to have art. But, I mean, what the hell do I know? People love a lot of stuff. And I think a lot of, a ton of music that is made in this collaborative way sounds good. And sometimes it's, the best ideas from a bunch of different people, and So I don't know.
All right, I'll say it like this. I'll ask like this then. I'll switch up the question. Do you think it's oversaturated? Because just like it's like if you make a pot of spaghetti, right? Mm-hmm. You know, you're gonna have your spaghetti sauce, your onions, peppers, your meatballs, whatever. And then, you know, it's going to have other people that's going to put mushrooms. And, other people's going to want to put in shrimp and, you know, sausage. And, you know, it just turned into a complete mess.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the danger is less in that to me and more in that you end up having the same, you know, the same source material for beats over and over. That like stuff comes from a small.
See, you hitting the nail. You are hitting the nail right on the head. Because I was about to say that too. Because it's crazy how a lot of people could be working on the beat, but the beat would just sound so simple and average. It's like, damn, it took 30 of y'all to do that.
Sure. I mean, one thing I will say is like this is not just, you know, a reason this happens to do with sampling laws, right? Sampling is so expensive, or can be so expensive, can be so difficult, that what happens is people are kind of making their own samples. That's where a lot of beats start, is people just making melodies with the intent that they will then get sampled by producers. So it's kind of like, instead of using a mandrel record or something, you're using, you know, a melody from, you know, from a producer somewhere. So that's a pretty big change. And that, you know, that's been happening in some version for a long time, but it seems to very quickly be becoming the norm. You know, to the point where I'm surprised now when I see that, you know, a Zaytoven will make a beat start to finish by himself. You know, Zaytoven happens to be an incredibly talented piano player, is very capable of that, but I think that kind of stuff is less common than the alternative where it's 2 or 3 or 4 producers working together.
You know, it's funny too, Sean, because when you said a beat coming from Germany, I'm thinking, because automatically when you said Germany, I think of the Snow Goons. You know, shout out to J.S. Custer and the crew. And then you said by the time it gets here, you know, Noah 40 Shabib and then Drake. I'm like, that'd be interesting to see a Noah 40 Shabib and Snow Goons collaboration with Drake rapping on it.
I just mean that I was more pointing to the fact that like stuff can come from all over the world now, and there are a lot of people in Europe who are making these kinds of like melodies with the intention of other producers, you know, picking them up and sampling them and changing them around and adding drums and then getting them to rappers.
Definitely. Now, in terms of hip-hop being global, and of course with Sandman, with the question he asked, this is a very, very, Sandman is passionate about it on 2 fronts, because number one is as well
the Silverback of Rap 2, the Silverback of Rap Part 2 is out right now. Silverback of Rap 2 is out right now, everybody out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, continue on. Shameless plug.
It's all good. But it's, in addition to Sandman being an accomplished and elite MC, he's also an accomplished and elite chef as well. So, you
I am. Thank you.
So you see how, Sean, this ties together in terms of all the ingredients, in terms of making sure that when you have that collage of, flavors, that it all has to make sense. Now, do you think a lot of times, conversely speaking, with a lot of artists, it just becomes a name game as opposed to actually an organic kind of, an organic blend of, an entree of excellence in reference to what is cooked up? Do you think a lot of artists now are just going for the name brands, but not necessarily knowing if those styles or those producers actually fit their particular type of style of hip-hop?
That's complicated. I think
you're doing too much, C-Max. You stumbling him. Come on now, don't do that to him like that.
No, there there are some types of projects where having a name producer is important, right? And I think in those, there's probably, I haven't been on the inside on making one of them, so this is just a guess on my part, but there's probably some kind of dance between art and commerce, right? A mix between like, we need a big name, but we also need a great beat, and those things, right? And that's a
brand
constant
equity.
dance. Yeah, but I think also there are a lot of artists, particularly young ones today, who don't care. Find a beat on YouTube they like, and they don't care who made it. They like the beat, and they'll work that part out later. You see that over and over again with a lot of young artists. Sometimes, starting, I think the big example everyone thinks of is Panda, right? Where the guy who made Panda, was just a beat they found on YouTube. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. I wouldn't even
found his beats on YouTube. He didn't know 808 Mellow was from London. He just, only got in contact with 808 Mellow after recording. He was just searching type beats on YouTube and found this stuff, and eventually it became his sound.
See, this is the thing. You are making a great point, but I want to sit there and say for only the younger generation, I think it comes like universal when it comes to listeners being suckers for hot beats, because 90% of the time, if the beat is hot, we are all going to want to listen to the whole song. You're like, what, this beat is hot. You know what I mean? Because the beat is the first thing that catches your attention. Because if the beat is trash, you're going to be like, I don't give a fuck if the nicest rapper's on this beat. I don't want to hear this bullshit. You know what I mean? The beat always catches you first. So I'm not saying that you're wrong for saying that, but, I understand. I'm just saying that I wouldn't just say only the younger generation is a sucker for hot beats, because I think it's been around forever. Because I ain't gonna lie, I'm one of the few too that's a sucker for a hot beat.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all are, definitely. I'm saying I think like there can be a mix between like, I want a beat that sounds great and I feel like I need this or that producer on my album. But for a lot of artists, I don't think they even have that issue, right? They just want whatever music they like, and they don't particularly care what the producer's name is.
So,
that.
I want to segue. Matter of fact, my bad, T-Max. Go ahead, because I wanted to ask him. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna say the elephant in the room. I'm gonna call out the elephant in the room.
Sure.
So you are the editor of one of the 6ix9ine articles that you had wrote, right?
I have written a ton of articles about 6ix9ine and was the reporter and writer on a podcast about him. Yeah.
So bring people up to speed about that, about those articles that you wrote. Talk to people. Talk to us.
Sure. I mean, I've covered his case from basically when he was arrested back in November of 2018. Went to almost every court hearing and talked to lawyers, talked to sources for the podcast. We interviewed probably around 50 people who were close to the story in all sorts of different ways. And I'm still reporting on him today, obviously, now that he's, out and on home confinement somewhere. So, and, as your listeners probably know, he's on home confinement until, I think, either late July or early August, at which point he'll be completely free. And he's, making music again and making videos and trolling people on the internet, kind of, just like he was before he was arrested.
Wow. So he only got 3 months parole? 3 months what's what I'm looking for? I said it right? Yeah, wow. So wow.
The way it worked was his sentence was 24 months in total, But if you count the time he spent in prison already, from when he was arrested to the court case and testifying and being sentenced, you add that up, and then you take off, you only serve, I forget, 85% of your time in the feds. I forget exactly. I think that's it. By the time you add all that up, by the time you add all that up, he only had about, 4 months left of the 24-month sentence. We could
all agree to that too, but we could also admit and tell people like, look, this dude had a hell of a lawyer. Like the lawyer that he had, whoever his name is, he should be Johnny Cochran status. Let's really be real, because matter of fact, I won't say he's that. I won't say he's up there like that, because it wasn't a murder case, but it was a conspiracy to murder case, and drugs and all that extra shit. So it's like, wow, it's like 6ix9ine should be giving credit to his lawyer instead of giving credit to himself. Don't you think?
I mean, he did give credit to his lawyers on his very first live. He thanked, I believe he thanked his lawyer, and he also thanked the AUSA, the assistant U.S. attorney. That might have slipped by most people who weren't paying close attention to the case, but on his very first live, when he was, after he got released from prison because of COVID, he thanked the assistant U.S. attorney, which was kind of funny, sort of funny minute of inside baseball for those of us who have been covering the whole thing.
It's like he only asked once. It's like he asked once, like, oh, it's COVID in there. Can I leave? Okay, you good. R. Kelly been asking for like 4 times, and it was like, you ain't going nowhere. Say your ass in there.
Well,
Tekashi at that point had already been sentenced and only had about 4 months left. Like the decision to let him out for COVID, in the end, I certainly understand. He was in a really bad private jail in Queens, where it ended up after he was released, it came out there were a lot of COVID cases at that jail.
Oh, wow.
Very, very small private jail in Queens over by the airport.
There's a lot of COVID cases everywhere. Like that ain't nothing new. Like we dying all over the place.
It's terrible in prison, and particularly in MCC in Manhattan and MDC in Brooklyn. MCC in Manhattan, the Daily News has been doing incredible coverage of just how bad it is there. And I would recommend all your listeners look up at what the New York Daily News has been writing over the past couple of weeks about, the federal prisons in Manhattan and Brooklyn and the conditions there, particularly as it relates to coronavirus. It's really, really terrible. And they've been doing really good reporting on it. But yeah, I would say it was a combination of, yes, he had very good lawyers. Shout out to Lance and Dawn. They did a great job. And also, one thing I learned from following this case closely is that, being a cooperating witness really helps. It's something that the government wants to encourage, and the main tool they have to encourage it is giving people lighter sentences.
Wait, now let me stop you right there. Hold on, T-Max. I'm going to give you the floor, my guy. I'm going to give you the floor, T-Max, because I'm glad you just said that. Now, honestly speaking, would you say what he did was the right thing? Basically, we all know what he did. Let's not be foolish. Let's be real. We all know what he did. Do you say, given what you just said, do you think that was the right thing he did?
That's a really tough one. I think a lot of people who watch this case closely, myself included, really, wondered what we would do in that position. You're facing at least 47 years in prison unless you cooperate. You feel these people have all betrayed you. They've tried, some of them have tried to kidnap you. Some of them tried to steal money from you.
They did. They actually did. They did kidnap him, and they did steal money. They did do that, So it's not a maybe on that. Yeah, they, so.
They, one of the defendants definitely kidnapped him, and the stealing money thing, that's a little more ambiguous. I've been looking into that for a long time. That's, there's a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about that, but he certainly believes it. And, what would you do in that situation? And,
Oh, you asking me?
I know. I'm sort of asking hypothetically.
Oh, you said, okay.
Everyone who's followed the case has wondered that, and I don't know. I mean, the best thing I can think is that, I would hope that I wouldn't end up in that position in the first place of having to make that kind of bargain.
Sean, which because one thing about this is that there's so many layers that I want to get to with all of this, because obviously this case, and him as an individual, this was an overarching narrative on the state of hip-hop today in reference of what we're dealing with media circus antics, about what street code is, like, Sandman was alluding to, and also more or less, about how, celebrity is achieved, because one thing about it, when we look at how this whole case started from its nascent phases to where it is now, I guess more than anything, and I guess I'll get to this question later on, but how have you seen a situation as you reported this so thoroughly as you did? What did you take away from an element of how far somebody would go to get to be a celebrity and then find out ultimately what they sacrificed themselves in? Because when we look at what happened with Audra Mack, Anthony Ellison, and of course Kafani Jordan, of course Nuke, Harv, and Shotty, for those who already know, we're dealing with a situation where, this was a kid, Daniel Hernandez, 6'9", we're just going to, just put everything out there. This is a dude that basically was trying to get on in the game and, essentially needed, in his own words, he needed that push to get in terms of aligning himself with some real goons who could really give him that credibility coming in. Add that in with some crazy-ass antics and a wild-ass appearance. And, I mean, we're not even talking about the other legal issues he had before this shit hit the fan.
It's a whole other discussion, which, by the way, we cover in depth on the second episode of Infamous. I would, if anyone wants to know about the 2015 case, we go into detail of exactly what that is in the podcast. So,
we can't give everything away. We got to leave something for our listeners to check out. To come in with. But man. But
exactly.
I feel you. Sell that. Let people know again. Let people. Wait, hold on. Wait.
What did you see as an
individual
in terms of who
My bad, y'all.
And why did
wait, hold on. What's your name again? And let them know your podcast. Let them thoroughly, let them thoroughly say the podcast.
Sure.
And his name.
Yeah. So I'm Sean Setaro, and I'm the writer and reporter of Infamous, the Tekashi 6ix9ine Story, which is a Spotify exclusive, Spotify and Complex podcast. You can find it exclusively on Spotify. It's an 8-part narrative series narrated by Angie Martinez. So Infamous, the Tekashi 6ix9ine Story. You can find it on Spotify.
Shouts go out to Angie Martinez too. She's like all of our auntie. So shouts go out to Angie Martinez.
Working with Angie was fantastic. I was, she was the only one we ever wanted to, be the narrator for this, and we were thrilled it happened.
Yeah, when it comes to being a journalist, like I said, she's definitely our aunt. And when it comes to a urban journalist, what's your nationality, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, sure. Italian on my dad's side and Russian on my mom's.
Okay, so I don't know if you know, like I'm you know what I'm saying, I'm from the Bronx, right? And I've been listening to Angie Martinez like on Hot 97 ever since like in the early 90s. So for her to still be in the game, a lot of people got to put respect on her name, you know.
Yeah.
And that's awesome for you to work with her, you know. So you definitely should be privileged and feel privileged to work with her when it comes to anything, because she definitely doesn't pull no punches. It's not like I'm rubbing her balls right now, but still, you know, I'm not kissing ass, but she's the auntie of the journalist game. I'll leave it like that. She's everybody's auntie.
Guys, what I miss out on?
Man, I was like Batman out the shadows.
But this is what I wanted to say though.
Yeah, I was on the phone.
Go ahead, King.
Atlanta, yo, they tell you Atlanta is getting crazy right now. They got people up in CNN headquarters held hostage and stuff. It's like a movie out there.
Say what?
Whoa. Yeah, nigga, motherfuckers ain't playing, B. Yo, man, like, oh man,
I take 1 hour away from the news and the world goes crazy. That's insane.
Motherfuckers ain't playing. Like it's you know, it's enough. And you know there's certain people out there that's just so oblivious. They thinking like, oh, this just happened out of the blue. Like, no, man. You know, this been happening for hundreds of years. And then it's crazy how this happened during a lockdown when people's been in the house all, you know what I'm saying, all winter and all that. So you thinking like, okay, when motherfuckers come outside, they've been in the house all winter or whatever, given this pandemic, they already hype. So them doing that is making it even more hype.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's you know, like, and I'm not gonna sit there and say it's sad. No, it's not. It's not sad, because how much of the bullshit are we gonna take? These motherfuckers need to start holding these crooked cops accountable. That's it. Because there is good cops. Of course there's good cops. I got family that's cops. I got family that's judges. Not all of them is bad. No, they're not. But there's these certain dickheads that are racist, and they just take the job just to, you know, feel free on killing people.
Got them Roscoe
for nothing.
New Jersey Drive cops. Got them Roscoe New Jersey Drive cops out there.
Yeah. Like, come on, like, man, it's like, this wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen if these motherfuckers would get held accountable. Like, you know what I'm saying? This dude, he got charged or whatever. The one that killed George Floyd. You know what I'm saying? He got held accountable. They are about to sentence him, and you shouldn't even go in the courtroom. First of all, why are we wasting my tax dollars to take this motherfucker to court? And you see this shit as plain as day. And I don't mean to take a shine off you, my dude. I know you are a guest, but this is an issue that needs to be addressed. It's like the elephant in the room. It needs to be addressed because this is disgusting. And us as a people is sick and tired of this shit.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You'll find no disagreement from me at all. Like, this is, you know, obviously a systemic issue that, like, you were right on the nose when you said this goes back hundreds of years, right? If you go back to, like, even the origins of, like, what were police supposed to do originally when they were formed, right? Where did they grow out of? Yeah.
Slave catchers,
yeah. Right, exactly. So this is you know, a systemic American problem, you know, and
now,
yeah.
Now one thing about it too, Sean, Sandman made such a very visceral, valid, and very, very necessary point about what's going on. Now, hip-hop has always been considered, one thing about hip-hop has always been the way of rock and roll in the sense of being the rebel outlaw that was always going to go against the grains of what was deemed, normal Americana sensibilities and traditions. How much, more today do you feel that artists need to be more vocal? And I'm not saying none are, because a lot are, but, one thing about it really sticks to me in a very, very, very sour way when, not that I expected him to necessarily be a savant or some type of epistle of wisdom, but just the fact to just dismiss it. When they used a few years ago when they interviewed Young Thug, I believe it was the BT Awards or the Soul Train Awards, they asked him, is it something, do you feel that hip-hop artists need to take more of a stand on social issues? And he was like, nah. He's like, we out here shining, bling. And I'm just looking at this dude. I'm like, what, this fool here, it's just like, but it just.
Yeah, that's the main thing they'll say. Like, oh, I'm rich. I don't know nothing about that. We shining over here. We rich. It's like the bozo Lil Wayne. Oh, I'm rich. I'm a young, rich black man. I don't know about racism. This is oh my God, I really hate when they ask them these questions. Like, I understand you're not political, because I'm not political. I don't give a fuck about politics. I don't. But if something is right in front of your face, it's right in front of your fucking face.
How do you feel?
Go ahead, Sean, go ahead.
Here's what I have to say about, rap and politics, which is, I'm just going to steal my answer from Boots Riley, who is, one of my favorite rappers.
Shout out to the Coup, man.
Yeah.
Bay Area, Oakland.
Whenever he's asked about this, he gives some version of this, which is to say, like, it's a movement issue. It's not a music issue, right? When there are viable, engaged social movements, the music comes, right? The music comes out of the movement. It comes to support the movement. Sometimes it comes from people trying to capitalize on the movement to make a buck, whatever, right? But you can't have, you are not going to have movement music without a movement. So, that to me is kind of where we're at. I think, as you had the original incarnation of the Black Lives Matter movement grow, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you had music come out that played a very important part in that and spoke to that. And I think we will likely see if, what is happening now is the beginnings of some kind of sustained movement. I think in a few years down the line, you'll see people who sort of earn their stripes in what's happening in, Minnesota and New York and Atlanta right now, making music inspired by those experiences. So, it's political music doesn't exist in a vacuum. It has to come out of, be in dialogue with a social movement.
Let me ask you this now, since you brought that to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are editor. Do you think that when it comes to music like that, it doesn't get pushed as much as party and nonsensical music?
I mean, this is a ever-present problem. I think this. Sure.
Take your time. Take your time. Take your time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
that's the fuck I'm talking. See, that's what I'm talking about. Be real. You ain't gonna lose your job. You good. You off the cuff radio, B. You off the cuff, B. You should already know how we do. Speak your mind.
I saw Michael Moore speak many years ago, and I'm going somewhere with this, I swear. He was talking about how he had a TV show on Fox, and he said the reason he had a TV show, what he did with his TV show at the time was make it entertaining so that a lot of people would watch it. And he said, that's the truck that I'm going to, I got a little hole in the system with my TV show, and I'm going to drive a truck right through it. And so he, he got this TV show and he tried to make it, as relevant and radical as he could, in the confines of having a TV show on Fox at the time. And I think, hopefully artists will do their own version of that, right? Make things that there are a lot of terrible things about the marketplace for music and other stuff because a lot of capitalism is terrible. It's a system that rewards things that aren't challenging and are like other things and that sell easily, right? That's not just a problem with rap or music or records. That's a problem with every widget in the marketplace. So, sure, yeah, stuff that is, derivative and easy and only concerned with having a good time sells, maybe gets, more money behind it or more popular attention. I think the question then is, honestly, what can people do? What can movements do? What can artists do? What can audiences do to force me and my colleagues to write about it, honestly? If it is popular enough and enough people are paying attention and it's relevant enough to the world, we're going to cover it. We can always do a better job of picking out, engaging and relevant music to cover. Absolutely. That's not to excuse people in the media. Absolutely. We can always do a better job. And also, there is room out there for music that has substance and connects with a lot of people, and there is room in the system for that to get coverage and attention.
Now, I wanted to ask you this, Sean. How do you think hip hop journalism has changed in terms of where it was? And I guess I'm asking this because I would look at a lot of the old Source magazines that I have. I have all of them from 1994 and up, and I looked at how the journalism was panoramic in reference to not only the music but the political and world situations, the events that were going on, and then kind of how it's being reported now, and now even to the point that some would say that even print journalism, and of course your magazine complex has done great extensive pieces on artists, but even then now some people even trying to say those mediums of journalism are outdated in terms of print, which I find absolutely ludicrously insane. Because I prefer to read a book
Complex,
any
for the
day.
record, unfortunately stopped publishing print a couple of years ago. We are web only.
But how do you feel about that paradigm in terms of how people feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a very big question. In this internet economy, it's an attention economy. Some of what is always hanging over people's heads are clicks. I am very fortunate to also be in a place where, I can, and I think everyone is trying to duck and dodge and find this perfect mix of things that are relevant to our audience and also are important and have substance and can be great stories. And both parts of that are real. If I write, 30 stories that I think are phenomenal, but no one reads, I won't be employed very long. Right. So it's always about that cross-section of finding things that are going to be relevant to people. And also, then also hopefully will be useful and interesting.
Well, and I want to take this back to the 6ix9ine article, Sean, because I wanted to ask you, why was that piece so poignant and such a passion for you, and what did you find out? Because we looked beneath the layers of all the ignorant shit he did, but there were a lot of sub-layers in reference to the persons involved, the individuality, the temperaments, what's the word I'm looking for is failing me right now. The purpose behind the pursuit, whether economical or respect or perceived respect in the streets. What did you learn from all these confluence of emotions and finances and everything in terms of writing what you did? Because this covered a lot of areas on so many places.
All right. So there's a couple of questions there, and I'll try to make this short. And then, unfortunately, I got to run this, but this has been amazing. But I'll wrap up by saying this: like, there's two questions here.
Go ahead.
There's first what got me interested in the story in the first place, or kept me interested in it, and that's that. Honestly, it just didn't make any sense to me for a long time. Like all parts of it were so confusing and outrageous, right?
It was random shit.
The kid's got crazy hair, but you know his dad was killed in front of him, but it wasn't his dad. But he's but he started his career in Eastern Europe, but like. He had this whole, he was Crip before he was Blood. Like, it just, he beefed with Jake
man.
He filmed a robbery and put it on YouTube. Like, what, none of it made any sense, right? It was all just a bunch of confusing, outrageous things, one after another.
Right. All clickbait. Yeah.
And so a lot of it was just like, how does this make sense? And so getting into the minutia, getting into the every aspect of this, helped me at least understand it. I'm not saying, was it good? Was it bad? Did he do right, wrong, whatever? But like, at least helped me understand how it happened. What happened, in what order, why did things go this way? That kind of stuff. It was
the unlikely culmination.
Well, you should know that. You should know, like, basically, fuckery equals likes and comments. It just is what it is. Like, that's how it makes sense. Yeah, it may not make sense to us common folk, but when it comes to, how can I explain it? I guess you could say most entertainers, yes. If they don't know any other way to entertain, yes, they're going to put some fuckery up and have people, because people like fuckery. We all love fuckery. We all love fights on social media. We all love fights. We all love half-naked bitches. You know what I'm saying? We all love motherfuckers smoking weed.
Yeah, it wasn't just the fuckery, though. It was that each element of it was so confusing, right? Like that he did a show in Slovakia before he ever played a show in New York. Like, how the hell did that happen? That he, was the quintessential SoundCloud rapper, but never had a SoundCloud page until he was already a superstar.
Right.
That he had this weird case from 2015 that no one understood and people were calling him all kinds of names about and just kind of knew there was something like bad, right? But no one knew the details. But still he became a star even though that was known as he was blowing up.
Right.
Is Treyway a person? Is Treyway a label? Is Treyway a gang? Is it a crew? What the hell is
this is it. This is what Treyway, because, I'm from the Bronx. Treyway stemmed from the 9 Trey gangsters. They're supposed to be blood, right? So I guess they try to rebrand it to Treyway.
I mean, we go into this in the podcast in some detail, so I'd recommend everyone listen, to kind of get into, what different people, even people close to the situation, have different takes on what Treyway is, and we get into that a fair amount. But the point is, there was a whole bunch of confusing stuff, and so I really had this drive to try to make sense of it.
It's not really that confusing at all. From the outside looking in, it's really not that confusing. They bumped their head, and the OGs, they bumped their head, and they let this young dude go crazy. And it was on them to sit his ass down and be like, yo, chill. You're not going to sit there and tell everybody to suck your dick. You're not going to sit there and, put out hits. All we need you to do is keep pumping that music. And if push come to shove, yeah, of course. Because, the money was going to come regardless.
Right.
And if any bullshit comes after that, let us handle that. No. They was doing too much for no reason. Let's take it back. Hold on. Let's take it back to when the Bloods first got to the Bronx. I don't know if y'all know. When the Bloods...
You talking about with OG Mac with the United Blood Nation?
Yeah. And this has nothing to do with... This has nothing to do with OG Mac, because I know him. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing to do with him. But when they came out into New York or whatever, motherfuckers was just running around causing problems. They was out there jumping old ladies, slicing old ladies, and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So, in a way, it was like they was trying to reinvent that, but not really. I can't sit there and say that they was really trying to reinvent that, but look at what they was doing. Y'all sitting there letting this young dude invite people to his cock, and y'all not telling them, like, yo, chill. Because we all know, as a man, ain't no other dude gonna sit there and say, yo, suck my dick. And then you're gonna be like, oh, he's just a crazy guy, whatever. Get out of here.
There's no possible way.
No, that is a hell no.
Well, I would just
that's the ultimate. That's the ultimate disrespect.
Yeah.
It's like, where do we go from here?
I would just say, if you want to get into the dynamics of why that went on and what support he had in doing that, what's one of the things the show gets into is the ways in which he kind of broke rules and broke codes, and why he could do it, and how he kind of, how he managed to do it consistently for a year until obviously he and everyone else got arrested. But yeah, this has really been amazing. Thank you so much, guys. I'm sorry I have to run a little early. But
it's okay.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, my dude. You good. Don't worry about it. Thanks for you being here and sharing your honest thoughts.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was great. I would love to do it again sometime. And I really thank you so much for having me on. Awesome. Take care, guys.
All right.
Sean, thank you again. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know. You think we scared him off?
Nah, we didn't. Sean is a busy.
I hope not.
He's a busy guy.
I hope not.
He's a busy dude, man. That dude, when you work for a company like he does, you got a lot of stuff going on. And that man. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, he's got a lot happening. The fact that we were able to get him on the show.
Because the reason why I asked that, because the 6ix9ine topic is still fresh, and he knows people that knows people. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I was like, yo, hope that's not the issue, because we all off the cuff radio. We do ask the hardcore questions.
Well, Sam, man, one thing about it with him in terms of it, Sean is one of the most distinguished and decorated reporters in the game. So nothing he did, in terms of the articles, and I read a few of them, there was no fuckery in the articles. All he did was kick straight facts. And the truth defends itself. So people cannot be mad at him for what, number one, they can't be mad at him for reporting it, and they can't be mad at him because somebody else did the dumbass shit that he reported about. He's just reporting what happened. And like you said, with all the situations, because a lot of people got to understand, especially from Brooklyn to the Bronx, where the Bloods will come in, because, of course, for a lot of people that don't know, OG Mac is the one who started United Blood Nation, and that would eventually become the impetus for many, if not all, of the Blood gangs in New York, most notably Nine Trey's in Brooklyn, and, of course, Sex, Money, Murder in the Bronx, Soundview houses with Pistol Pete Rolla. That's a whole different subject. But, but the fact is like you said, there was a lot of stuff 6ix9ine was doing he should have not been doing that kind of was allowed to go on for too long until it got too late. And then everything ended up the way that it did. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Let me tell you this. If you deal in this business of hip-hop, you're dealing with different personalities. You're dealing with cats from the streets. So, at the end of the day with Sean, if he can deal with those personalities there on a daily basis, this was just a brush up with the way we was coming at it with the questioning and the way our approach is with the show. So this is basically just like a cakewalk compared to the personalities that you got to deal with every day at Complex.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
especially with the Joe Buddens and the Joe Buddens of the world that was up there, and the everyday deals that you have with everyday struggles.
Especially Joe Budden.
he bipolar. So the music industry itself is a bipolar business. We tell that to anybody. If you're getting into this thing, you gotta have some thin skin. You can't come in this thing as a fan. You can't come in this thing as someone that's very, very easy impressionable. These niggas will disappoint you.